What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with the RK Outpost, and the disaster that is Santa Inc. just continues to get worse, as Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman have effectively abandoned this project. They are no longer talking about it. They are no longer promoting it on social media because they're just that embarrassed. They can try to excuse it away all they want. They can say that all the criticism is due to bigotry and white supremacy, but everybody knows that that's just not the case. And in fact, the very people that this is supposed to be targeted at, they are even rejecting this for the garbage that it is. You can see the headline here. Why did Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen make a Christmas show, and why is it so bad? By Mira Fox. And we're going to get into this article because I feel like this is actually the target audience for this. This is who Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman attempted to make this for without realizing that nobody was asking for this and nobody wanted it. It's clearly taking shots at the vast majority of what could have been their audience intentionally. And the worst part about all that is it's cringe and unfunny. It would be one thing if it was taking shots at people and it was funny, because that's what comedy is. Everybody, it is fair game to make fun of anyone and everyone. But when you do it in a way that's one, not funny, and two, clearly feels like there's something else behind it, that's when people are going to reject it. And reject it they have. Like we talked about, this Rotten Tomatoes score still sitting at 4%. Now that is despite some of the best efforts of Rotten Tomatoes to really play very funny with some of these numbers. And the fact that we still only have 2 critic scores is hilarious, because the critics don't like this. That's why they're not going to review it, because the critics don't want this movie to be down there in the 10s. That is why I feel like so many critics have refused to do it, because they are trying to protect this movie, but they know they can't give it a good score. They just can't. Not even these losers in good conscience could give this a good score. So not only did we see it on Rotten Tomatoes, but over on IMDb, it's still sitting at a 1.1. The lowest rated TV show in history. That is the failure of Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman. And like I said, they really have not been talking about this very much. After Seth Rogen, this is now almost a week ago, tried to blame it on white supremacy. Tens of thousands of them apparently. They are the only reason that people didn't like Santa Inc. That is very strange. It's very strange how everywhere you go around the web, the vast majority, we're talking about 96, 97% of people despise this. Is that how many people you think are white supremacists out there, Seth Rogen? I don't quite think so, and neither does anyone else. And when you go to Sarah Silverman, it's kind of the same. She's tweeted out a couple articles randomly have nothing to do with this over the past few days. She hasn't said anything since December 4th when she tweeted out that promo for Santa Inc. that did not go over very well for her, as you can see by the ratio right there. The thing is nearly ratioed. It's pretty darn close. So they've basically given up on it for good reason, because they completely missed the mark. I want to go through some of this article, and it's written by Mira Fox. Now, I went to Mira Fox's page because she talks a lot in this article about why they were so prevalent with the Judaism references throughout this thing. There's a lot of Jewish references in this show, Santa Inc., made by Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman. So I went over to her Twitter because it is linked in the article. Not only does she have pronouns in her bio, but she's also Jewish. So the idea that she is having these criticisms is very interesting, because I kind of feel like this was the target audience for them. Let's read through this. What if Santa was a Jewish woman? That's a question no one asked until Santa Inc., a new stop animation show on HBO Max starring Seth Rogen as Santa and Sarah Silverman as an elf named Candy Smalls. Of course, no one really needs to ask that question, and even Santa Inc. barely addresses it. The show is more concerned with unnecessary raunchy humor and claymation nudity while cramming in truly impressive number of things that happened to Jewish people in the 1940s jokes. The plot is a bit hard to follow thanks to the copious secondary storylines about casual hookups, harassment, and drugs, and more harassment. But it follows the going on at Santa Inc., a corporation that runs Christmas, staffed by reindeer and gingerbread men and anthropomorphized ornaments. Candy Silverman's character is campaigning to be the next Santa Claus. they do go into a lot of the corporate structure and totally corporatize Christmas, which is an angle you could go to. I would get if that was where they were going to criticize it. Much of the show seems to be trying to highlight the toxic masculinity and workplace culture that characterizes many large corporations. The political messages are pretty heavy-handed, with her friends frequently chiming in to say Candy's becoming a bad friend and a bad person as she climbs the corporate ladder. The more interesting question is why it exists, and why it stars Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman, two of the most visibly Jewish actors in Hollywood today. Silverman in particular recently accused Hollywood of Jew-face and took issues with representation in her podcast, taking the industry to task for always casting them as hokey sidekicks. You might think this Christmas series made by two famous Jews would have some greater message about anti-Semitism or Christianity's hegemony in the US, but instead, Silverman 2 has reduced Jewishness to a handful of hackneyed stereotypes in Santa Inc. And it goes on and on and on. Despite the lazy references, Rogen and Silverman seem to be trying to emphasize the show's Jewishness. A promotional clip talked about who Christmas carols are written by, and obviously Seth Rogen made headlines by claiming the show's poor ratings were actually caused by white supremacists with hate-fueled reviews. But while reading through the reviews, you do surface some comments about a woke war on Christmas. The majority complain about crude jokes and unimaginative writing. It feels like the writers thought if you throw a swear in a sentence, it makes the sentence a joke, wrote one commenter. So this is clearly targeted. They're trying to tell a story about a feminist Jewish person becoming Santa. That is what this story is about. And even the people that it's most aimed towards don't like it. They despise it. They're calling it out for being absolute garbage that should not exist. That should really tell you just how bad Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen have missed the mark when the mainstream media and your target audience has said, this is garbage. We don't want this. We shouldn't have this. It's trash. Because that's where we're at this point. You have the occasional, story coming out from the mainstream media from like Looper, kind of backing Seth Rogen's blaming of the fans for this, blaming certain people and saying they're phobes all because of this. But to be honest with you, it's a lot less than I expected would happen. I thought the media would really, support Seth Rogen, support Sarah Silverman, and blame it all on toxic people. But that really hasn't been the case. There has been few and far between. There's been articles for sure, but a lot of them are kind of calling out Seth Rogen and saying, if you look through the comments, really doesn't look like that's the problem. It just gets worse for Santa Inc. What an absolute joke. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.